so much for being here this evening for our town hall in Great Junction. We've had a whirlwind week so far, and the congressman's off after tonight from the church and a couple other places for some other town halls. I'm Christian Reese. I'm going to be your moderator for this evening. I'm a field representative for Congressman Tipton, and if for some reason we're not able to answer your questions or address your concerns, there's a stack of my business cards at the back of the room, and then there's also some up here at the front of the table, so please don't hesitate to grab one of those cards and contact our office here in Grand Junction so that we can address every single one of your questions and concerns that you guys may have this evening. So since this is such a large crowd tonight, we've handed out tickets. If you haven't gotten a ticket, please raise your hand and we'll get one over to you. Deanna? And those tickets are because since we have such a large crowd, we're going to be drawing those tickets out of a bag tonight for an opportunity to address the congressman, to ask questions, or to give any comment you might have directly to him. So please listen up and have your tickets ready once he's done giving his speech so that we can make sure that we can call your number and get your concerns or questions answered. I'm sure many of you do have questions or concerns that you would like the congressman to address. Please keep your questions or comments brief and to the point. I understand that disagreements are inevitable, but I would ask that respect be shown to everybody who speaks this evening. And if that's going to be a problem, then we're going to have to ask you to leave, unfortunately. I don't want to, but we have had those situations where respect hasn't been shown to each other, and we don't want to have that shared tonight. Again, if you don't get your question answered, please take one of my business cards and please send me an email or give me a call and let me know what your question or concern is so that we can get that taken care of. So with that, Congressman, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
So you join me in the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Well, thanks, Christian. I really want to thank everyone for taking the time out of your schedules to be able to be here this evening. As many of you have probably heard on the news, Congress is in recess, and I don't know about you, but I went to grade school. I know what recess is all about. This isn't it. I am happy truly to be able to be with you. We started out yesterday. We were in Durango. Went up, held the town hall meeting up in Uray, got in Grand Junction last night. About 10:30, we went over to St. Mary's Hospital this morning. Met with the Grand Junction Sentinel, had a couple other visits as well. We'll be heading down the road for the balance of the week and then return to Washington next week. So these are work weeks where we try and take that opportunity to be able to get out into our district and to be able to hear some of the concerns. And I want as quickly as possible to be able to get to your questions, but I do want to give you a little legislative update in terms of some of the bills that we've been able to carry and be able to put forward. Pleased to be able to report to you that my Small Hydroelectric and Jobs Act of 2013 is now passed the full House of Representatives, passed with 417 votes, only 7 people voted against it. If you aren't familiar with this legislation, good common sense piece of legislation. Through the canals, through the pipelines that were built by the Bureau of Reclamation, what we here in the West call ditches, we're going to be able to generate as much electricity as the Glen Canyon Dam with this legislation. People down in Arizona in particular are very excited about this, and to give you an idea of some of the challenges that we really were facing with just very common sense piece of legislation. In Arizona, there was a hydroelectric project the water district was wanting to be able to put in. The cost of the equipment and the labor to be able to put this in was going to cost $20,000. The regulatory hurdles that were put in place by the federal government were going to cost $50,000, 2.5 times the project. So we just stripped away unnecessary regulations to be able to make this viable. It's going to be great for our water districts in terms of being able to pay down debt, to be able to pay back electricity back into the grid, to be able to operate irrigation pumps if we can get some more water to actually be able to pump as well. We also have our Healthy Forest Management and Wildfire Act, which I think is going to be critical for the western United States. As we all know, we've seen devastation in our forests in terms of the bark beetle kill that's been ravaging the entire West. This is going to actually empower our state once again, bringing power back to our governor, back to our county commissioners. We've got John Justman here, one of our commissioners, to be able to make the determination of imminent threat to our communities, around our watersheds, power lines, our schools, to be able to go in and actually do real treatment on those areas to be able to prevent that threat of wildfire. So good legislation that has cleared the subcommittee in terms of natural resources. We'll have that before the full committee and hopefully on the floor later this month. I've also introduced my Planning for America's Energy Future Act, which calls for all of the above. It will require the Secretary of Interior working with the Secretary of Agriculture to be able to develop a plan for the responsible development of our resources on public lands. And we enumerate in the legislation wind, solar, geothermal, hydroelectric, oil, gas, oil shale, coal, minerals, to be able to develop these resources on American soil, to be able to create American energy security. It was right here in Grand Junction just about a year and a half ago, and I wish I'd gotten the young lady's name. It was a gas station conversation. This young mom was just measuring how many gallons of gas they would put in her vehicle and still be able to go into the grocery store to be able to feed her family. Isn't it time in the United States that we secured our energy future and created jobs on American soil to be able to put Americans back to work? I think that's important. So these are some legislative issues. I know that you're all aware of what we're hearing on the national media right now in regards to something that is deeply of concern to me, and I believe to many of you. When we start talking about Benghazi, when we're talking about threats to our press, that First Amendment right, which is equally important as our Second Amendment right, to be able to protect. What we're seeing come out of the IRS in terms of targeting groups simply for their philosophy. And whether this is for a conservative group or for a liberal group, the arm of the federal government should not rest heavy on Americans who are trying to be able to express their opinions. And it's something that we need to make sure that we're uncovering all the facts on. So with that, I'd like to close, and again, I deeply want to thank you for taking the time. I know there's a lot of places you'd rather be than here this evening, but I do appreciate you taking the time, and we'll open it up for questions.
Okay, so the last three digits are 125. 125. Got any questions or comments? Sorry.
We can't hear. Please use your mic.
Okay. They're trying to stop all the drilling up on Thompson Divide. Basically take away our property rights and make sure that we can produce energy. And there's already been drilling going on in that area for a long time. Actually, the drilling doesn't really hurt you. And be careful about it now in terms of livestock raising or anything else. I wonder if there's something we can do, because you have these small groups of very vocal people to start all these initiatives. And the press picks it up, and it seems like everybody wants to stop all this development. Is there anything that we can do about that? You know, we're certainly the issue that's going on with the Thompson Divide. We've talked, I've held meetings with the Thompson Divide Coalition, also met with people that own leases and are trying to be able to develop this. This is a property right, and I believe we're trying to be able to develop some of those conversations actually between the developers and some of the community for them to be able to work this out. We do need to actually address and make sure that we're doing it safely. And what I'd like to be able to point out, we've had Colorado, Harris Sherman, who's the Undersecretary of the Forest Service, because a lot of this gets into the fracking issue that is going to be there. But we had Secretary Harris Sherman of the Forest Service, Colorado, by the way, that was appointed by President Obama. We also had Director Abbey of the BLM, who was also appointed by President Obama. And of course, my questioning, I just wanted to know, because I was unaware of how many fracking operations that we had nationwide. Well over 1 million. And I heard an estimate last night of 50 million, which would be huge. I see a few heads that are nodding. Well, my question to them, because we're Coloradoans and we understand the importance of being able to protect our water. I'm going to protect it. I'm fighting to be able to do that right now. I asked, how many times have we gotten into the water table? These are 2 appointees by the president, and the answer was 0. We want to make sure that it is done safely. We want to make sure that we are protecting our communities, and we also need to make sure that we're working together as Americans to be able to secure that energy future for every American. Because when we talk to senior citizens on fixed income, we're seeing taxation via regulation that's now coming out of the Colorado legislature that is truly going to be able to impact us. Young families, like I mentioned, that are trying to be able to pay their bills, and they wonder where the money is going, and it's going through a variety of different sources. So this is something to where it's my sense and what we continue to be able to work on, to be able to pursue win-wins rather than that philosophy that some want to embrace, creating a win-lose situation. I think if we're willing to be able to collaborate with each other and talk in good common sense fashion and to be able to look at real science that's going on, I think we can help achieve that. So I appreciate it.
Zero 70.
And if you took a ticket and don't want to ask a question, you don't have to. This is kind of like this is the only lottery I'd probably ever win.
074. Zero 94. No? Okay. That's fine. 950. 952.
Sorry. So is our new Secretary of Interior going to be a little more pro-energy development on the federal lands, or we're going to continue to shrink leases? And the road plateau is, I don't know where we're at on that. We have the county commissioner signed a letter of support to the Secretary of Interior, I believe, and whatnot, and that'll all take time, but there's also some large leases up there by, I think Bill Barrett had them at one time, and they're all on hold, so I don't know if you have any update.
Well, John, I appreciate that question. We're actually trying to be able, and you'll be among the first to know if we're able to get that facilitated, to be able to have Secretary Jewell come out to the West Slope. Because we've got a variety of issues, not only in terms of, we've seen production on private lands increase, production on public lands decrease. And these are jobs that are important for our communities. And I've had the great privilege of being able, in fact, we're going to be doing a tour tomorrow, of talking to people that have dirt underneath their fingernails to do these jobs. And these are people that love their area. They want to make sure that the water is good, the air is clean, and to be able to do it right. And I'm hopeful that Secretary Jewell, being a Westerner, a Coloradoan, and somebody who has worked in the industry, can actually understand some of the value of the responsible development. We've also got challenges that are going to be facing our farm and range community in addition to any natural resource responsible development that we'd like to be able to look at. And that's going to be the Gunnison sagegrass and the greater sagegrass and some of the impacts that those are going to have. We want to be able to focus on that with Secretary Jewell, that this broad brush that the federal government would like to be able to bring in, to be able to identify areas as potential habitat, critical habitat for the sage-grouse. We need to really look at some of the real science. When I was in Garfield County recently, they'd had a proposed area of critical habitat just for the sage-grouse that was going to exceed 500,000 acres. After they went in with real science in Garfield County, that was going to be reduced to 15,000 acres. A significant difference. We see some of the value, obviously, of the endangered species, but this, we need to be doing this with good common sense and being able to look at it. And so, if we're able to get this lined out, this is something that we are very anxious to be able to visit Secretary Jewell on. And if I can throw in one other point that I think is going to be really critical for Westerners, for Coloradoans in particular, is the threat against our water. We have seen the Forest Service attempt to require our ski areas as conditional use of permit, and ranchers who have BLM leases, if they've developed and paid water rights on those public lands, if they want to be able to get that permit renewed, they're going to be required to sign that over to the federal government. In Colorado, we call that a taking. We have private property rights. We have priority-based system here in Colorado. We have state law here in Colorado that must be respected. We now have a second tier that's coming out of the Department of the Interior that was initiated by Secretary Salazar, and it's called Blue Ways. When you read through it, it sounds very nice. It's talking about bringing stakeholders together to determine what will happen with water from source to mouth, meaning from when it melts in the mountains until it hits the ocean on non-navigable rivers. That happens to be all the water virtually of Colorado. Again, we need to remind the federal government, stakeholders, this is not community property. We have private property rights, we have state rights, we have priority-based systems for our water. We're working on legislation right now to be able to codify not only Colorado but Western water rights from this preemption by the federal government. And so these are all issues that we want to be able to bring up with Secretary Jewell in regards to preserving the quality of life and building for the future of the West.
1, 2, 3.
That would be me, and we've already kind of answered some of my questions. So,
Thanks, Sam.
116.
We'd like to know what your stance is on the change CPI proposal, the Social Security that was in the proposed federal budget.
Yeah. You know, this is something that we're going to have to really look at, because this is part of the challenge that we have. We've now got a $16.8 going to $16.9 trillion debt that we're going to have to be paying as Americans. We're right now paying better than $200 billion, $220+ billion a year in just interest on the current national debt. In 7 years, that is going to rise to $778 billion in terms of just interest on the national debt. We're soon going to be at $1 trillion in just interest payments alone. And so the opportunities to be able to pull back in and be able to have some merit-based testing and change CPI, we've got to get this under control for the future of our children and grandchildren to be able to work on.
But Social Security didn't contribute to the deficit or the debt. Social Security was solvent, and still is until 2036.
Right.
But it was borrowed.
It was, and we also have the problem that's going to be corresponding with, and the President has failed to address this yet, as we have pointed out. And if you look at our budget, we're going to be able to create continuity for those programs when we're looking at Medicare, because that's going to be going broke in just 7 short years. There is no plan, save the one we put on the table, to actually be able to save that. And I concur with you totally. You know, previous Congresses, they've dumped Social Security effectively into the general fund to be able to do this. But this is now an American challenge that we are going to have to be able to face together and to be able to look at some opportunities to be able to create some real savings, because we can delude ourselves as we have for an extended period of time, that if we continue to print money and we continue to spend, that everything's okay. But we need to look no farther than Portugal, Italy, Greece, Spain, Cyprus, nations that are spinning themselves literally into oblivion. California. In the case of Cyprus, that's the prime example. The bill will be paid. We're open to a lot of suggestions. Nothing is passed officially yet in terms of being able to collaborate. So give us your thoughts in terms of which ways we do need to look. I made a commitment to be able to stand with our seniors. We can't change the rules for those who have currently in the system, but if it's going to be sustainable. So, yeah, and I think one of the bigger threats that would actually be to the people currently in the system is if we don't get this under control and we have no money to be able to pay for anything. Yeah. So,